What is up, guys? Alex here. If you're a bike rider who's been riding for a long time already, or you're just getting into it, one of the essential things to know is how to replace your tube in case you get a punctured tyre. This is inevitable as a bike rider. You'll eventually get a flat tyre, and you may as well know how to fix it yourself. So we're going to run you through the steps today so you don't feel stuck and you can do this yourself at home or on the side of the trail. So this tyre here is already flat. This one has a puncture, so we're going to replace it and bring you along for the ride. Jump in. This will apply for any bikes that have tubes. It won't apply the exact same for tubeless, but the same concepts, getting the tyre on and off, will apply to a tubeless system. The most fundamental thing with taking your tyres on and off your bike, whether it be for a tube replacement or changing your tyres, is getting the tyre into the centre of the rim. We do this because all bike rims have a valley in the centre where it's lower, and essentially the centre of the rim, the diameter from side to side, is smaller. So this is where we're going to have the most slack in the tyre to get it on and off. So the essential part to change your tyres is getting the tyre off the edge of the rim, which you might call the bead, into the centre of the rim. So when we have our flat tyre, first thing we want to do is make sure we've let all the air out. Even if you've got a puncture, we just need to make sure that there's no air left in the tyre, and this will really help get the tyre off. So once we get all the air out, we can start anywhere and go around both sides of the tyre, de-beading the tyre or pulling the tyre into the centre of the wheel. This can be quite pronounced on a tubeless style rim where it might snap off. On a rim like this one here, you won't feel much, it will just pull into the centre. On a really tight tyre, we might even use this technique to make it easier. We'll start at the valve, we'll pull it into the centre, and I'll pull it into the centre whilst pulling constant pressure down. This pressure will keep the tyre in the centre of the rim. And then when we get to the other side, we'll have moved all our slack to getting it off. So you see this here, we've got this nice and loose so we can get this off. With a bit of practice, you'll likely be able to take off most tyres with no tyre levers, but at this point, this is where you can use your tyre levers to make the job a little bit easier. So this is where we got our levers. So once we got all the tyre slack here, we can use the lever to put underneath the tyre. I'd recommend pulling it back as we do this, so we can lever this off. So we get our first lever under, and we can use the hook to hook it onto the spoke, just like this. And that's where we can direct our attention to the second lever and move a little bit further up. So this is where we'll just a little bit further up, and there'll be a tipping point at which it will start to fall off the edge. You might need to go again on a really tight setup. But once you get to a point where you get a little bit off, it will be fairly loose and you can just start to take half the tyre off. At this point, we have access to our tube inside now. We don't need to take the tyre completely off to do a tube repair, but at this point, if we had a new tyre, this is where we could just pull it off the side, and simple. Once we've got half the tyre off, we can remove the tube. It should come out really nice and easily. You just need to pull the valve out of the hole. And at this point, very important to keep the orientation of the tube as exactly as it came out. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to pump this tube up, and we're going to listen, and we're going to find where the air's coming out from. So we'll pump this up, and you'll hear a little bit of air coming from right here. What we can do then is locate where the valve came from, locate where our hole is, and then we'll kind of know exactly where we're expecting that the hole happened, and then we can pay extra good attention to that area of the tyre to make sure we don't have any glass or any staples or anything stuck in it. So pump it up first, we'll find the hole, then we'll check that area specifically. If that area is clean, that's okay. We can just keep checking everything else out and have a really thorough look on the tyre. I'd highly recommend you use your fingers carefully on the inside, carefully because it can be a bit of sharp glass, and you would visually look along the outside of the tyre to look for something stuck in from the outside. Could be as simple as like a drawing pin or like a staple or anything really. So we'll go around the tyre, carefully check it, feeling the inside and looking on the outside. Once we're happy that the tyre's okay, we can check the rim tape, make sure the rim tape is in good condition. We don't want to see the rim tape exposing any spoke holes, or if the rim tape's peeling off or broken, that's something we'll need to definitely consider. But assuming that the tyre's okay and then the rim tape is okay, we can continue to put our new tube into this wheel. Your brand new tube will be rolled up really flat in a box. It's really important to make the job easier and also less likely to puncture it again. We want to put a bit of air in the tube. So you want the tube to have a little bit of air so it holds its shape, just like this. That air in the tube can also make it harder to finish putting on a really tight tyre, but we can let some more air out as the process goes. So initially, enough air that it holds its shape like this. We can then start with our valve. Find the valve. On a road bike, you might need to peel the tyre across like this, and we can start with putting the valve in. Like that. Next, we can lay the tyre into we can lay the tube into the rim, just like this. And because we put a little bit of air in it, it holds its shape really nicely. So at this point, really importantly, we always start to reinstall the tyre opposite the valve, and you'll know why as we finish this job. We'll start opposite the valve. We'll tuck our tube in to make sure it's all nicely in, and then we want to start pulling our tyre on. And tucking the tyre into the rim. So we'll start in one area at the top opposite the valve, and we'll symmetrically work our way down to the valve, and we'll finish central on the valve. So you'll often need to just tuck the tube in as you go. At this point, once we're starting to get to the end, we can release a little bit of the air we put in, which will make it a little bit easier. So we can keep tucking. And it's starting to get tight at this point. Once it starts to get tight, this is where we have a high chance of causing a pinch flat, which is when we drag this tyre on, there might be a little bit of tube that's stuck between the tyre and the rim. And what will happen is when we inflate it, that will puncture and we'll have to start the process again. So we've got to be really cautious not to pinch the tube, and finishing at the valve leaves us with a simple little trick that will save a lot of tubes. So we get to this tight spot here. The next step we need to do is return to pulling the tyre into the center of the rim. So if the tyre is sitting up on the edges, it's going to be much harder to get the tyre on. So we come back around, pull it all into the center on both sides, and it's going to get looser and looser and looser. We can also, on a really tight tyre, repeat the process where we start at one end, and we can start to grab the tyre and pull as much of it as we can towards the valve where we're finishing. And you'll often find when you do it this way, you won't even have any drama getting it on. So it starts to go on like this, and we'll just keep dragging a little bit at a time, and eventually it will just come over, just fall over the rim, just like that. Now, the most likely time you're going to pinch the tyre is when you're pulling that last little bit on. As we said before, there's a very particular reason why we finished pulling the tyre on right at the valve. Where we pull the final bit of tyre on is when we're going to be the most likely to pinch the tube between the tyre and the rim. If we finish at the valve, we have the ability to push the valve up, which will pull the tube into the center of the tyre and unpinch it if it was pinched. The valve should be nice and loose like this. If the valve is firm down and doesn't want to move up, that's a good sign that the tube is pinched between the tyre and the rim, and the tyre is holding it down and sitting on top of the tube. So up, and then we know that the tyre is not pinched where we've just dragged the tyre on. Well, I'd highly advise we run around the tyre and pull it back, and make sure that you can't see any tube sitting between the tyre and the rim. It'll be fairly obvious if you see the black tube hanging out or like folded in and out. So we really want to check for that. If we did pinch the tube under the tyre, we'd want to pull it off and start again. So once we're good, last step is we just need to pump it up. I would really recommend we just start out with a little bit. We start maybe with 15 or 20 psi, and then we can go around and visually inspect. Make sure the tyre is sitting evenly, it's not jumping off the rim. Sometimes you'll see the tyre is not sitting on and it's about to fall off, which is where we'll just need to let a little bit of air out and make sure it's all tucked in nicely. Once we're happy that both sides are fitting on well and nothing's going to jump off, we can inflate it to full pressure, up to your desired pressure, put it back in the bike, and then get out there and go for a bike ride. Now, you know how to change your tube in case you get a puncture, or this is the exact same process if you want to put new tires on, or anything really. So it's a very good skill to know for you to do at home. So let us know how you go, and if you need any advice, drop them in the comments, and we'll follow up soon.